This video is brought to you by Squarespace. Stick around to see how Squarespace can help you build your own beautifully designed website or online store with ease. Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania has finally arrived, so here's everything you need to know about the heroes and their new villain Kang before seeing the new film. 2015's Ant-Man introduces Scott Lang, a well-meaning thief who has just been released from prison. Scott desperately wants to reconnect with his young daughter Cassie, and prove himself to his ex-wife Maggie and her new fiancé Paxton. Unfortunately, the only job the ex-con can find is at Baskin-Robbins ice cream, so Scott agrees to help his friend and former cellmate Luis commit a burglary. Other members of Luis's crew include Dave and Kurt. During the heist, Scott sneaks into a home and breaks into a heavily armored safe, only to find a mysterious suit. Scott takes the suit home and tries it on, discovering that it has the power to shrink him down to the size of an ant. Horrified by his experience, Scott breaks back into the home to return the suit, but is then caught and arrested. The home's owner, Hank Pym, helps break Scott out of jail and reveals that he had manipulated an unaware Luis into orchestrating the heist as a test for Scott's thieving skills. Hank Pym is a genius scientist that had developed Pym particles, which allow its user to shrink or grow at will, as well as a cybernetic helmet that allows the wearer to communicate with ants. Using this technology, Hank and his wife Janet Van Dyne became the superheroes Ant-Man and the Wasp. Janet was killed decades ago after shrinking too much and going into the subatomic quantum realm. In the present, Hank has been kicked out of his own company, Pym Technologies, by his former protege Darren Cross. Cross develops his own version of the Pym particles and creates a supersuit of his own, dubbed the Yellowjacket. As Cross prepares to sell his dangerous technology to the villainous Hydra organization, Hank plots with Scott to break into Pym Technologies and steal the tech to keep it out of enemy hands. Helping train Scott for his mission is Hank's daughter Hope Van Dyne, whom Scott takes a romantic interest in. Hope not only blames her father for her mother's death, but also resents him for entrusting a stranger like Scott to save the day instead of allowing her to don the old Wasp suit and defeat Cross herself. Eventually, Hope recognizes that her father only wants to protect her from a similar fate as her mother, and the two reconcile. Hank's plan comes to fruition as he, Hope, Scott, and Luis's crew all work together to break into Pym Technologies to steal the Yellowjacket tech. Unfortunately, Cross discovers the heist and uses the Yellowjacket suit to battle Scott. Eventually, Cross captures Cassie, demanding Scott give him the Ant-Man suit and the Pym particles. Going against Hank's previous warnings, Scott goes subatomic to defeat Cross, who uncontrollably shrinks out of existence. Scott then manages to leave the quantum realm and reunite with his family. Maggie and Paxton are impressed by Scott's heroism, Scott and Cassie bond, and Hank gains a renewed hope that Janet is somehow still alive in the quantum realm. And as the film comes to a close, Hank finally trusts his daughter to take up the Wasp mantle. Scott Lang is next seen in Captain America: Civil War, as the heroic Avengers team cause unknowable damage and destruction during their quest for peace. The United Nations realized the heroes had too much power to remain unchecked. And so the UN passes the Sokovia Accords, which grants them complete power and oversight over all superheroes. While heroes like Iron Man and Black Widow support the Accords, others like Captain America greatly oppose them, trusting their own judgments over those of a panel of politicians. And so the Avengers fracture into two groups, leading to an all-out civil war. One of the many members recruited for Team Cap is Scott Lang, who joins in on the epic hero versus hero fight. Ultimately, Team Cap is defeated and Scott Lang finds himself arrested alongside his allies. The story continues in Ant-Man and the Wasp. 2 years have passed and Scott Lang is days away from completing his house arrest sentence. When he begins receiving visions from Janet Van Dyne from the quantum realm, Hank and Hope kidnap Scott from his home, placing his ankle monitor on a giant ant so as not to set off any alarms. The trio then devise a plan to build a tunnel to the quantum realm inside a shrunken version of Pym's lab, which would allow them to rescue Janet. To build the tunnel, they attempt to buy a part from a black market dealer known as Sonny Burch, who in turn double-crosses them to steal Pym's technology and research for himself. And Sonny isn't the only person after Pym's tech, as Hank's former colleague Bill Foster needs the tech for himself. Bill is working alongside a young woman named Ava Starr, who goes by the moniker Ghost. Ava's parents were killed in an experiment which left her quantumly unstable. Although Ghost has the power to phase through objects and become invisible, she also was dying and in a state of constant pain. Foster needs to use energy Janet had absorbed from the quantum realm to cure Ava, but Hank fears this will kill his long-lost wife and refuses to help. As the various parties all fight over Pym's miniature lab, Hank manages to enter the quantum realm and rescue Janet. Luis's crew arrive to defeat Sonny, Burch, and his men, and Janet agrees to give some of her energy to Ava, temporarily stabilizing her. As the film comes to a close, Scott Lang returns home without having been caught for evading his house arrest and is finally released from his sentence. Janet is finally reunited with her husband and daughter, while Scott and Hope's romance continues to grow stronger. But that's not where the story of Ant-Man and the Wasp ends. In Avengers Infinity War, the villainous Thanos goes on a quest for power, killing his daughter Gamora and reformed villain Loki along the way. Eventually, Thanos defeats the Avengers and collects all of the Infinity Stones, which gives him the power to wipe out half of the entire universe's population with a snap of his fingers. This snap occurs as Scott Lang is in the quantum realm collecting energy to further stabilize Ava. As Hank, Janet, and Hope monitor Scott from the outside, Thanos' snap wipes them from existence, leaving no one to pull Scott out of the quantum realm, trapping him there indefinitely. In Avengers Endgame, 5 years have passed since Thanos' snap. The surviving Avengers are depressed and defeated, unaware of how to move on. After a rat accidentally activates the quantum tunnel and pulls Scott Lang out of the quantum realm, he discovers that most of his loved ones are now dead, and although Cassie has survived, she is now a teenager. This greatly confuses Scott, as even though 5 years had passed on Earth, only 5 hours had passed for Scott inside the quantum realm. Scott takes this information to the surviving members of the Avengers, who deduce that they could use this knowledge to travel back in time to collect the Infinity Stones before Thanos can get his hands on them, and use a snap of their own to bring back all of their dead comrades. And so Scott joins the Avengers on their time heist. Scott travels with Iron Man, Captain America, and the Hulk to the year 2012, where the villainous Loki is attempting to take over the world with his Chitauri army. Unfortunately, Scott fails to retrieve the Space Stone, which is instead retrieved by the past version of Loki, who in turn flees. Fortunately, Iron Man and Captain America are able to travel back even further in time to retrieve this Space Stone, and the other Avengers return to the present, having successfully completed their mission. Using all of their newly acquired Infinity Stones, the Hulk uses their power to snap his fingers and bring back all of their snapped allies to life, including Hope, Hank, and Janet. Every single hero comes together in a final fight against Thanos and his army, who are ultimately defeated after Iron Man sacrifices his own life. And so Scott, Hope, Hank, and Janet are finally free to live their normal lives. And while that's everything you need to know about Ant-Man and the Wasp, it's not quite everything you need to know before Quantumania, as the new film introduces the villainous Kang, first teased in the Disney Plus series Loki. In season 1 of Loki, the villainous 2012 version of Loki that escaped with a space stone is apprehended by the Time Variance Authority, or TVA, and taken to their bureau, which exists outside of space and time. The TVA serve a mysterious council of timekeepers, and it is their purpose to keep order to a sacred timeline and destroy any branches or disturbances to the predetermined plan. Because this version of Loki isn't supposed to exist and is therefore dubbed a crime against the sacred timeline, the TVA sentence him to be permanently erased from existence. Fortunately, TVA agent Mobius M. Mobius is a fan of Loki and convinces the TVA to spare Loki's life in exchange for helping them catch another mysterious Loki variant who is hell-bent on destroying the TVA's sacred timeline. Loki eventually meets this mysterious variant, who is actually a female version of himself named Sylvie. As Loki grows into the hero he was always destined to be, he also falls in love with Sylvie and becomes sympathetic to her mission. The TVA have erased countless innocent time variants from existence, and the very nature of a predetermined sacred timeline removes agency and free will from every living person. And so Sylvie is on a quest to kill the timekeepers and take down the TVA. Eventually, Loki, Sylvie, and Mobius discover that the timekeepers are fake, and that the sacred timeline was actually created by a man known as He Who Remains. Sylvie and Loki confront He Who Remains in his citadel at the end of time. He Who Remains explains that in the future, several variants of himself from various multiverses had teamed up to conquer every known universe, culminating in a multiversal war. He Who Remains found a way to stop the war and isolate the multiverse into one single sacred timeline, which he needed to preserve. Although Loki sides with He Who Remains, Sylvie still murders the man, destroying the sacred timeline and unleashing the multiverse. And so, it is now only a matter of time before He Who Remains' villainous variant known as Kang the Conqueror emerges to once again stake his claim as the ruler of every known universe. Now I want to tell you about this video's sponsor, Squarespace. Squarespace is an all-in-one platform that helps you create your website or online store to help build your brand and connect with your audience. I use Squarespace to build recapandchill.com, and the process could not have been any easier. They help me lock in my domain name, and they have an insane amount of custom templates to choose from that are fully customizable to fit my needs. I especially love the video block feature that allows me to display all of my recaps right on my homepage. And if you're looking to get into videos yourself but don't have any editing software, Squarespace also offers a video studio that helps you create pro-level videos effortlessly. And the best part is if you head on over to squarespace.com/recapandchill, you'll get a free trial plus 10% off your first purchase of a website or domain name. Thanks again to Squarespace for sponsoring this video, and thanks to you for watching. See you in the next one.